would like to start with a small secret. The way you draw a circle can change your life. But before we start, let's first start with one small activity. I want everyone in this room today and those at home to look around. And look around for circular objects. I see one right there. My watch is a circle. And my pupils and all of our pupils are circular. You see, a circle is such a basic and fundamental geometrical shape that we simply see everywhere. I mean, it's in our house, our kitchens, and we have circular shapes inside of us. Our DNAs, some of them have circular shapes. You see, a circle, which is again deemed as something so fundamental and so basic, is actually one of the most complex geometrical shape that mankind has ever drawn or attempted to. Well, according to Professor Natalie a kinesiology in the Arizona State University, stated that the drawing of a circle simply by hand is indeed impossible. Well, that is not the end of my talk today, so don't worry. But you see, our brain simply does not have the resources to be able to do corrections of movement while having to do cognitive tasks at the same time. In simpler words, it simply does not have the precision to draw a completely smooth curve. But what's interesting is that our brain, it's all different and it's divergent. And this movie is a very good interpretation and title of how our brain is simply unique and diverse and, again, divergent. You see, when drawing a circle, every gestures, angles, and pressures that is played into drawing a circle is always different, even among ourselves. So how do we expect a whole society or a whole population to be able to draw a perfect circle when each and every one of us is not even able to repeat the same exact movement in the same exact millisecond? But you see, ironically, our brain loves the symmetry of circle. It loves perfection, like a perfect circle. But just like drawing a circle, some of us here today or at home may be striving for this perfect life. But you see, just like drawing a circle, reaching perfection is not possible. But also, just like drawing a circle, its imperfection brings out one's identity and cultural expressions and sparks of its own. And it's beautiful and breathtaking. And this is how and why. Hello everyone, I am Gisela, and I am a proud Indonesian. And the first language that I have ever learned to speak and to write is Indonesian. Now, I would like to ask, what was your first language that you learned? Was it perhaps Indonesian, like mine, or probably English or Japanese? Also, think about your culture and your upbringings. Well, if your first language is Indonesian or English, you would know that the transcript flows from the left to the right side. And you right now may be asking the question, so how is this related to circle again? Well, you would be surprised to know that this inimitable circle that we draw is able to be linked with geography and history and culture deep-rooted in hundreds of years of written language. That this circle right here, the circle that I just drew this morning, is able to show that I am an Indonesian. Well, let's go back to the circle earlier. As you can see, there are bajillions ways to draw a circle. One way is to consider whether you want to start in a clockwise direction or an anti-clockwise direction. How many of us here today have ever heard of the game Google Quick Draw? Well, if you haven't heard of the game, which is not gonna lie, a bit sad, this game is basically a doodle game that teaches neural network to recognize drawings and doodles made by users from all over the world. And basically, the technology used in Google Quick Draw is highly similar to the one used in Google Translate. So let's take an example of Hanchu, or Chinese character, and the word SWA, which means study. And as you can see on the top right corner, the word SWA has a character, and there's 8 strokes. And basically, the algorithm in Google Translate does not only analyze the final outlook of the character, which is the last box, the 8 strokes, but also the first stroke till the 7th stroke. So it analyzes all the direction, the stroke, and movement that is put into drawing the character to reach the final outlook. And basically, this is the same with how Google Quick Draw's algorithm works. And again, the question remains, how is this related to circle again? So you see, Quartz made an analysis of 100,000 different drawings of circle from all around the world. And these circles are from the game, Google Quick Draw. And what's interesting is that they realized that 90% of French, Germans, and Koreans draw a circle in an anti-clockwise manner, while 80% of Japanese, Chinese, and Taiwanese draw a circle in a clockwise manner. And here is a bit of an explanation to why and how this is so. As shown on the screen is 2 different transcripts. The first is the hiragana transcript, which is the Japanese character, and the second one is Hanchu, or the Chinese character. As you can see, both of these transcripts has a stroke that flows in the direction of a clockwise movement. And often, these directions and strokes are embedded in children's and students since a very, very young age. And due to this, Quartz analyzes that Japanese, Chinese, and Taiwanese are more prominent to drawing circle in a clockwise manner. Well, this is the opposite with those from Korea, or those who learn their first language is Korean. As you can see on the slide, on the top character is one of the Korean transcript that looks like a circle. And as you can see, the stroke runs from the left to the right side, which is a counterclockwise. And similarly, Quartz analyzes that due to this, most Korean are more prominent to drawing a circle in a counterclockwise direction. You see, what I'm trying to say is that, again, a circle, something that is deemed so basic and so fundamental, is indeed impossible to be drawn by mankind perfectly. But this imperfection brings out one's culture and nationality. Just by analyzing its clockwise and counterclockwise movement, we are able to dig into one's potential first language that they learned or their nationality. Imagine how much more information we could get if we analyze how fast a person can draw a circle, or the starting point of a person to draw a circle. Imagine how much more information we can dig into this. You see, just by drawing a circle, simply a circle, we can earn so much about life and learn so much about one's identity. And there's so much correlation to it. Well, I know. You might be thinking, why is a 15 years old literally standing here right now talking about circles and morals and life? Well, you see, I have always been a person intrigued by science and by physics and astronomy. The idea of one's existence seemingly irrelevant while space and the universe seizes time and reality. How humans, so full of complex equations and nerves, forms egos and emotions and thoughts. And it's interesting, though, how we see ourselves as something so big and so important, but is so inconsequential in reality. And all of these questions and theories intrigued me so much that I started going down this hole of science and physics and apparently engineering. And one time I had a conversation with an adult and it went like this. Hey Gisela, what do you want to be in the future? And my 10 years old me bursted out, engineer and astronomer, not knowing how hard math, HL, and physics would be. And this person replied with, are you sure you want to do that? You're a girl though. It must be hard. You're a girl. At that time, I thought this simple word might not be a big issue, that it's simply a comment that just passes by. But later on, I realized how such a simple comment had so much impact on my life. How every decision I used to make evolves around the idea that I am a girl and whether or not this thing that I am doing is appropriate for a girl. And you see, engineering, is predominantly filled with males. And as shown on the slide, in the year 2020 itself, only 24.2% of engineers are female. And this idea makes me think that my circle that I am drawing is imperfect, because my passion lies in the minority. And comments from people and stereotypes saying that, are you sure you want to do that? It's not girly enough. Are you sure? You see, now by this point, I realize that it is not necessarily only about how I draw my circle, but rather who drew my circle. And I realized that it wasn't me. What I'm trying to say is that your circle shouldn't be perfect, but it should be yours. And you shouldn't let those stereotypes and the world decide what you are or who you are or what your future is or what your imperfections is. Because I realized that mechanical engineering, it wasn't an imperfection. And I was only able to know this when I started drawing my own circle. And that's it. The end, and happily ever after. Well, that would be my storyline if I was Cinderella in her glass shoes. But apparently, life goes on, and I find myself being in this world that is not a fairy tale. I find myself being in bigger problems and issues and more frightening of imperfections. You see, I wasn't brave, but I was over competitive and I had trust issues and I was scared of being unworthy and probably a hint of inferiority complex. And because all of this, it has this issue with validation, not necessarily from the world, but more from myself, from the idea that I need to work harder and better and smarter and faster. That's it, to work faster. That I need to fill in my whole summer with summer camps and competitions and activities so I can reach the best version of myself as fast as I could. Or what we know nowadays as the hustle culture. And this messes everything up because I began feeling numb and I wasn't sad or happy or angry despite crying a lot. And I thought this is not how a teenager should be living. Because this is how a teenager should be living. I should be out there dancing in the rain and going to sleep over and having fun with my friend or watching concerts like Harry Styles or BTS, artists I would die for. But I wasn't, and the pandemic makes it so much worse. And suddenly, it all hits. Like the inertia of it all suddenly comes to an end. And I find myself being stuck in this cycle of waking up, crying, sleeping, waking up, crying, sleeping, waking up, crying, and sleeping. It's like a rhythm that simply never ends. So it started from being numb to having these fountains of emotions. And what's the worst part of it all was that I was pretty much in denial. That every time somebody comes up to me and talk to me about it, I simply deny it. Because I was petrified that this perfect circle that I am drawing would suddenly shatter and crack. And the question, what is left after that, was one I am most petrified with. But then again, as what Professor Natalia Donskaya mentioned, reaching perfection in drawing a circle is impossible. And in my end, it is extremely self-destruction. So, my fellow humans, I hereby announce that the drawing of a perfect circle by hand is simply impossible, both theoretically and practically. And what I learned the most is that we are not perfect, and we shouldn't be, and we cannot be. Because all of these emotions that I had and all of these numbness that I had, it will one day come back. And it was just about how I would handle it and how I perceive it. And it's okay. So your math teacher might disagree, but not being able to draw this perfect circle is okay. And not being able to draw this perfect life is okay. Because all of this, it simply doesn't exist. And it's okay. Because you and me and all of us here today and at home, we're all different. And that is really good. So go out there and draw your own divergent story and draw your own circle. Because the way you draw your circle can and will change your life. Thank you.